I guess I'm really not going to organize this. Usually I organize by rating, but live and let live. That's the time of the month that it is for me, and I'm just flying by the seat of my pants in all that I do right now because work is busy. I have a 2-year-old. It's conference week. Like, my husband's a teacher, so we don't have this is just a chaotic week, so this video will be chaotic. Happy November. I'm gonna do my October reading wrap up today. I had a pretty good October. I think this happens to me every year, but I get so excited about spooky season and reading books that are witchy, scary, whatever, and I make this impressive TBR, which you can see there's a spooky video that I did earlier. And I rarely touch like a fraction of those books. Like I rarely touch a fraction of those books. And I'm also a mood reader, so that doesn't help. I can have the biggest stack of books that I want to read that are themed around spooky season, and I'll still read books that aren't spooky because my mood tells me otherwise. Library holds come in, whatever. But even putting that aside, I had a good October reading month. It just wasn't necessarily as witchy or as spooky as I wanted it to be. Let's get started. I read 11 books in October. That's really good for me. I mean, I would have liked to have read more, but that's the story of any bookworm's life. And I would say it was like half spooky witchy, but as I go through these, we'll see, because I haven't really sat down and like thought about them. The very first book I finished was Youre Invited by Amanda Giatisa. This was for the Literally Dead book club from Books and Lala. And it's a book of the month that I got, so it's also helping me complete my book of the month challenge. And I honestly really enjoyed this. It was a little slow to start, but I did really like it. I gave it 3 stars, which for thrillers, that's pretty good for me. This book flips between points of view. So the main storyline is this girl, Maya, is invited to her estranged best friend Kavi's wedding in Sri Lanka. She finds out that her estranged best friend Kavi is engaged to Amaya's ex-boyfriend. What a great friendship. Obviously, they're estranged for a reason. The wedding comes, she gets invited to it, even though she hasn't spoken to like any of these people in years. Throughout the events, Kavi ends up dead, missing. They just don't know what happened to her. So there's the storyline regarding that. And then every other chapter is a private security firm that is interviewing all of these people who are at the wedding. So it just read really cool, kind of like a mixed media book. I enjoyed it a lot. It kept me guessing. It was fun to read once you got into it. And it was a thriller. Like, I don't read a ton of thrillers. I find them to be underwhelming usually. So this one was just a surprise, and 3 stars for me is really good. That's Youre Invited, Amanda Giatisa. The next book I read was Small Town Big Magic, and this is an audiobook. It is by Hazel Beck, which is actually 2 authors writing together. I would describe it as Gilmore Girls plus the X-Hex. It's about a small community and is a witchy rom-com. So Emerson Wild is a local indie bookstore owner and the youngest ever Chamber of Commerce president for her town. And she'd do anything for her hometown of St. Cyprian, Missouri. After all, Midwest is best, which I'm a Midwest girl, so love that. She may be descended from a witch who was hanged in 1692 during the Salem witch trials, but there's no sorcery in doing your best for the town you love, or is there? She notices strange things happening around St. Cyprian, and they culminate in a showdown with her longtime arch rival, Mayor Skip Simon. He dispatches some creatures on her and her powers awake, and then the plot unfolds. It's got a beautiful romance and is just kind of, it was the perfect introduction to spooky season, and I actually listened to it on audio. I really enjoyed it. I also gave this 3 stars, but if you liked the X-Hex, if you liked Gilmore Girls, I would definitely recommend this. It starts out kind of slow, and the tone of the main character is kind of hard to love. She's a little preppy, but all in all, I was really into it. It was exactly what I needed at the time. So then I've been talking about these books for a few months now, but I read Sagas Volume 5 and 6 this month, and I think I'm good to take a pause for a little bit. I think I need to step away from that world. Both were great. I think I gave the 5th one 4 stars, and I want to say I gave the 6th one 3 stars. Let me see what Goodreads says. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. The family just keeps getting like scattered across the universe, trying to be reunited with their child, and different characters are interacting with this family. There's a lot of graphic sexual content, and a lot of it, and I'm someone who loves romance, just some of it was too much for me in these two, and I think maybe I'm just reading too much of them and I need to step away. I do really like the story. I loved like the first 3, loved them, and then the last 3 have just been kind of underwhelming to me. I know the newest installment came out, I think this month, and people are giving it really good ratings, so I think I might just step away from Saga for a little bit and then return when I'm feeling a little more like in the mood for it, because it is a very, very high rated series. Volume 6 is kind of cute because the daughter goes to kindergarten and just some cute teacher things that I did enjoy. So, and then I'm trying to read through older book of the month books. I'm doing the catch-up-a-thon that Books and Jams sponsored or hosted, and one of the prompts was read the oldest book of the month on your shelf. So I have a lot of old ones. Like I'm pretty sure I have 50 or 60 book of the month books on my shelf that I haven't read. I've been a member for years, so it's kind of bad. And you know, those add-ons, just the price, whatever. But the book I picked was Elizabeth Strout's My Name is Lucy Barton. Woo, sun's bright. This is about Lucy Barton, and she has some medical procedure that ends up not going correctly, or her body doesn't respond, so she ends up being in the hospital. And her mom, who's from Illinois, very rural area, comes to the hospital in New York City to be with Lucy. And it's a really beautiful look at Lucy's childhood and her relationship with her mom, as well as Lucy just kind of coming to terms with some things about herself. If you like Wendell Berry or Wallace Stegner or even Frederick Bachman a little bit, I would definitely recommend this. I will definitely continue on with these books. I love quiet novels where it's less about plot and more about character and introspection, and that's what this is. This is also a very short novel, but it's just a beautiful look at relationships with your mother, coming from maybe a traumatic or impoverished background, and I just really liked it. So I actually think Elizabeth Strout wrote a pandemic book about Lucy Barton, Lucy by the Sea, that came out this year. So I will probably continue on with this grouping of novels. I think it's kind of like Wendell Berry, where he writes, or where she writes, characters who are loosely connected, but not, you could read them standalone. But I loved it. I gave it 4 stars, which is really good. So Elizabeth Strout, My Name is Lucy Barton. And then the next few books, next 2, I'll just talk about them, are from the Well Met series. I just wanted to get those caught up because there's a new book coming out for the character that I've been the most looking forward to, which is Dex. So I read Well Played and Well Matched. Well Played I gave 3 stars. Well Matched I gave 3 stars. It must just be a 3-star month for me. I only have Well Matched as a physical copy. I did Well Met from the library, or Well Played from the library. I did really like Well Played. Well Played was about Stacy and then kind of a band manager for the Dueling Kilts, which is this Renaissance band that performs at the Renaissance Festival. And if you're unfamiliar with the series, it all takes place in a Renaissance festival that's seasonal, about a group of friends. In the grand scheme of the series, I liked Well Met, then Well Played, and then Well Matched. So Well Matched is the one I most read recently, and this is an age gap romance. Mitch is like, I want to say 9 years younger than April. April has always been kind of the broody character throughout the whole series, and I haven't ever loved her. I didn't really get on board with this. A lot of woe is me, things that annoyed me, and Mitch is just a teddy bear, cinnamon roll, perfect man, and I don't like how she treats him. So it was cute, but it was not my favorite by far in the series. Definitely still Well Matched and Well Played, but there is a new one coming out with Dex, which is a side character and Well Played, who the main heroine sleeps with before marrying the brother. Sounds real healthy, but trust me, it is. And yeah, so that's Well Matched. The next book is by far my favorite book of the month that I've read. My 5-star book of the month was The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, and I'm just gonna read this because this book is not getting the hype that it deserves, and everybody needs to read it. It is such a delight. It made me grin most of the book. It has a beautiful romance. There's folklore, mythology, just animals that have human characteristics. Just loved it. So here's the synopsis, which seriously, it's not getting the hype or the love that it deserves, and it needs it. So Hart is a marshal tasked with patrolling the strange and magical wilds of Tanria. It's an unforgiving job, and Hart's got nothing but time to ponder his loneliness. Mercy never has a moment to herself. She's been single-handedly keeping Birdsall and Son undertakers afloat in defiance of sullen jerks like Hart, who seem to have a gift for showing up right where her patience is the thinnest. After yet another exasperating run-in with Mercy, Hart finds himself penning a letter addressed simply to a friend. Much to his surprise, an anonymous letter comes back in return, and a tentative friendship is born. Bet you can't guess who he was writing to. If only Hart knows, he's been bearing his soul to the person who infuriates him the most. And as dangers from Tanria glow closer, so do the unlikely correspondence. Can their blossoming romance survive the fated discovery? It can, and it does. It's wonderful. And it kind of is epistolary, but it's not for very long. So if that's something you do not like, you don't need to worry about it. It goes pretty fast. I freaking adored this book. The romance was so sweet. It was believable. And 10 out of 10 recommend, 5 stars. It was great on audio if you like it on audio. I got it from Libro FM in exchange for an honest review. So here it is. Loved it. Thank you, Libro. Totally appreciated it. Seriously, it's my favorite book. The cover is a little lot. One of my friends told me the reason why she didn't pick it is because the cover is obnoxious. I really like the cover, and even more so now that I've read the book, because the book is quirky and the cover is quirky. It's got like these colors that don't typically go together. So chef's kiss, favorite book of the month. It is romance. It's beautiful. I'm seeing it more in romance spheres, like on the Fated Mates podcast, than I'm seeing it elsewhere. But you guys, it is not getting the love that it deserves, and everybody should read it if you like romance. My husband and I went on a weekend away. It was really wonderful. It was an 8-hour car drive, so we listened to an audiobook on the way up there, and then he listened to one and I read on the way back. So the next 2 books are those books. So the very first one, we listened to Sinkable by Daniel Stone, and it's about the sinking of the Titanic. It's not about what you see in the movie, not about the cast of characters. It is about the science of a sinking ship and how shipwrecks are found, and kind of an exploration of the deep, deep sea. It was very interesting. My husband is really into this TikTok account that's called Spooky Lakes, and I think the girl only works in October, or only does these in October, and he is just a fan. And I was trying to find something that would kind of go with that, and he's been trying, because where we were going was up on Lake Michigan. We went to Door County, and it was just such a great trip. So I wanted something that kind of went along with that, and so we did Spooky Lakes, but we did Sinkable. That was the audiobook, and it was actually really interesting. There's like the weird, kind of, he focuses on like the weird and quirky people who are really into shipwrecks, and how like to even find these boats, you have to have just an obscene amount of money. The thing that I think surprised me the most about this is how we live in 2022, and you would think finding a ship at the bottom of the ocean would be easy with the technology that we had. It is actually not, and it's such a complex science, and he really broke that down and explained it in a way that wasn't boring. It's really good on audio if you're looking for just a different audiobook. But the Titanic sank in 1912 or 1914, 1912, I think. And it wasn't until the 80s that it was located. And even then, like the amount of searches for it and just stuff like that was astounding to me, knowing what we know now. And even today, it could be hard to locate anything because of just the way the ocean is and pressure. And he talks about diving and deep sea diving, and it was really good. I gave it 3 stars. I could have done with less of the quirky people who become ship searchers and more with just fun, creepy facts about the ocean. It was pretty cool. Okay, so then on the way back from our trip, my husband listened to an Eric Larson audiobook that I had already read, and then I finished In the Company of Witches, which was for the Cozy Hollow Book Club. It was my first cozy. I will be doing a reading vlog on cozies plus our trip, because it was a very fall Gilmore Girl vibe, so they go hand in hand. And so I'm not going to talk about it. I did give it Again, I think I gave it 3 stars, which seems to be my theme for this month. It was exactly what I needed for a car ride because we kept stopping or talking or whatever. I could jump right in and out of it. So 3-star read, really enjoyed it. My in real life book club that I meet through with some women in my church, we picked East of Eden, and that is one of my favorite books of all time. Waited too long to read it. I should have started it earlier. So basically all of last week, all I did was read East of Eden, and it's a 600-page book. It's well loved. Like, you can tell I've read it and I've handed it off to people to read it. But if you're looking for an introduction to classics, definitely recommend John Steinbeck in general. Of Mice and Men is a very short book, but his writing is just really great. We had a really good discussion at book club. So John Steinbeck wrote this as a letter to his young sons, who at the time were like 4.5 and 6.5, because he wanted to describe to them the valley, the Salinas Valley in California. And you don't need a 600-page book to do that. But he did describe it. There's a lot of like surprisingly sexual things in this book for a book that was written in the 50s. The last time I read it was in college, so it's been almost 10 years. And reading it with these friends from church, we had the best discussion. And we were just giggling. So I'm like, I feel like he could have gotten around to telling his kids about this in a more appropriate manner. The villain in this book, Kathy, is still to this day probably the greatest villain that's ever been written. She has no motivation. She is just terrible and scary and creepy, but not in like a scary horror novel way, in just a messed up sociopathic way. The other thing is, this book is kind of a very blatant moral review of Cain and Abel and the Genesis story. So it's pretty easy. Anyone whose name starts with C is ultimately bad. Anyone whose name starts with A is good. And then there's Samuel Hamilton, who is just the sweetest old soul in a book ever. My son is partially named off of him. I did give it 4 stars. It used to have 5 stars, but I did that because there's a lot of unnecessary description in this book. Not as bad as, like, say, War and Peace, but there's just some stuff where I'm like, an edit probably could have taken 100 pages out of this book. And obviously that's not going to happen, but still, East of Eden is one of the best classics of all time. Definitely recommend if you are looking for an intro to classics. I would probably start with Steinbeck because he does write really well. It is written in the 1950s, so there are a lot of terms used that are not PC. Okay, so looking at my stats for the month, I read 6 books that were 3-star reads, 3 books that were 4-star reads, and 1 book that was 5 stars. So that's a pretty good month for me. 3 stars means I really did enjoy it. 4 stars means I really loved it. And then 5 stars is one that I will press into people's hands. I want people to read. So I feel like that's pretty accurately reflected in the books that I've read. And there's my October TBR. Hopefully November. November is more of a must read. I need to get to these books stack. So we will see. But thank you for hanging out with me today. If you've read any of them, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave a leaf emoji down in the comments. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.